Welcome to the Every Brain's Different podcast. It is Samantha and Lauren with you. And today, that was weird. That was a weird intro. I couldn't talk. Anyway, today we are talking about should kids with ADHD or anxiety or executive functioning, whatever, dysregulation, should they take medication? So, this is a controversial subject. I understand that. We are going to do our best to present the pros and the cons and just give you an overall picture. But before we do that, I forgot I'm going to do this at the beginning instead of the end of the episode. I'm going to shamelessly plug the Parent the Child You Have Summit coming up this Friday. So it's March 13th. It's free. It's online. We're going to have Jessica Frew come. She is the author of Shove Your Shoulds. And we're just shoving the shoulds of parenthood. So,
What time is it? Some
it's
people know.
at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And it's only about 2.5 to 3 hours. So it's not the whole day. It's not even like half the day. It's just quick. Come and get ideas of how to trust yourself and parent in the way that you think you should. Get ideas of how to gain a better relationship with your child. And yeah, we're going to be doing that. There'll be panelists that come to talk in addition to Jessica, and they will be doing Q&A. And so it'll just be your chance to talk to them, get more information, and just be with like-minded people. So I am super stoked. You can go to everybrainisdifferent.com to sign up for that. So
Perfect.
there's that. Today, though, a lot of parents ask about medication. I see it all the time on, like the Facebook groups and just different places like that where did this medication help your child? Did this medication help your child? The doctor said to take this medication. And I just want to put this out there. Even if you take medication, the medication that works for somebody else might not work for you. And just because that medication that worked really well for that person doesn't work for you, doesn't mean that medication can't work. It just means that they have a different body and mind than you do or your child does. So I don't really suggest being like, this works so good for me, you should take it too. I don't like telling people the medication that I take because then they think that, oh, well, if it worked for her, then it'll work for me. And that is not the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the case, but that's usually not the case. So remember also that if you are giving your kid medication, you are not taking the easy way out. People try to shame me for taking medication, and it doesn't work because your mind is just like your body. Like if you had diabetes, you would take medication for diabetes. So it's no different for taking medication for mental health things than physical things. The other day, someone's like, well, I've had those same mental health issues my whole life that you have, and I've never taken medication. And I'm like, that's great for you that you don't take medication. I am so glad that you can function the way you want to function and not have to take medication. For me, it was a living hell every day. So I take medication and it works for me.
Every brain is different.
Yeah, every brain is different. So if people try to shame you and you take medication or you're giving medication to your child, just tell them to shut up. Maybe don't tell them to shut up. Maybe do it in a nicer way. Or just tell them to shut up because
Tell them you're not my doctor. Thank you.
yeah, yes, that is better. And just also remember that medication is a tool in the toolbox. It is not the whole toolbox. So if you're taking medication, that doesn't mean that you're not doing other things. Like when I started taking medication, I did a lot of counseling. I don't do counseling anymore because I don't feel like I need it because I gained the skills that I needed. But yeah, I looked at counseling. I did counseling. I looked at my diet. I did exercise and I took medication. That was one of the things that helped me. So I like medication. because many neurodivergent kids have nervous systems that are constantly overwhelmed. For example, ADHD brain struggling with impulse control and focus. Anxiety keeps a child in a state of constant threat. And then autism combined with ADHD can create constant nervous system overload. So, once again, your child doesn't need fixed, quote unquote, fixed. So
They
medication
need
does not
support.
fix them. They need support. And medication can be one of those things. When my son started taking medication for ADHD, he came home that day and he just said, Mom, my brain was quiet today and I could actually think and I could do the things that I wanted to do because my brain was quiet. So medication works great for him, but it's also a tool in the toolbox. And then I like what my kid's occupational therapist said the other day. That's actually what spawned this whole episode. She said medication can be a pattern interrupter in the brain that makes it so it's possible for you to learn the other skills. Because if your brain is in a constant state of overwhelm, you're not going to be able to learn tools for when you get overwhelmed. So every time you get overwhelmed, you're just going to have maladaptive behavior. You're going to freak out or be aggressive or whatever because you don't have the tools to navigate that situation. But if you have the medication that brings down the overwhelm, then you're able to step in and get the help that you need and learn the skills that you need instead of just continuing to repeat the pattern of being overwhelmed and then you get way too overwhelmed and then you have a meltdown and then that doesn't feel good. Like even let's not
Constant
even
fight or flight.
yeah. I remember I used to be in a state of constant fight or flight after something pretty traumatic happened in my life. And I don't know how people live like that. I was so overwhelmed all the time. And then I started taking medication and it just lessened it so I could get the counseling that I needed, to get the tools that I needed to manage my life and not be in a constant state of fight or flight. And then instead of the brain being stuck in the same loop of overwhelmed impulsivity or anxiety, medication can calm the nervous system enough to create space for new learning, like we said. So, for another example, if a child is so impulsive or so anxious that they cannot pause, listen, or process instructions, it becomes a very hard task to teach coping skills, regulation skills, or executive functioning skills. And then that just makes it so that they get that constant negative feedback instead of positive feedback, and then they feel bad about themselves. So if medication can work, it can be that pattern interrupter where they can learn the skills and then get less negative feedback and more positive feedback.
Mhm.
So here are some pros, some more pros. Nervous system regulation. This is kind of like what we just talked about, but medication can reduce the intensity of constant stress signals in the brain. And this can help your child focus in school better, tolerate frustration, so that they don't even need to employ those coping skills as much because they're not as frustrated. And then manage impulses, they feel less overwhelmed, and make skill building possible. Because when the brain is calmer, kids can actually process things like emotional regulation, coping strategies, executive functioning, and social skills. And then without that calm state, teaching those skills can be virtually impossible or very, very difficult. And then the next pro is that it improves quality of life. So some kids feel huge relief when medication helps. Like I was telling you, my son just came home and was so excited because his brain was quiet. He was able to do his work at school. He didn't have the impulse to constantly stand up and walk around the room or do things that he shouldn't be doing. And so he was able to focus in class. He felt less anxiety because he feels so much anxiety. He didn't have any meltdowns that day. And then if you're doing all those things, it can improve your relationships with parents, teachers, and peers. And then it helps prevent the shame cycle. Like we said before, you have those impulses, or I keep saying you, but I mean your kid. Like your kid has those impulses and then they might interrupt and then they get in trouble by the teacher and then they feel shame and they're like, why can't I just listen? Why can't I pay attention? Why can't I do this? And they just get that shame cycle going. And then they hear things like, stop moving, pay attention, why aren't you listening? And so medication helps them to function better in environments like school, so it reduces the constant negative feedback. And so those are some of the pros. And I think those are pretty good pros. I've seen those in my own kids' lives, in my life. I wish that I had medication when I was a teenager just because it changed my life so much when I did get it. I think one of the biggest things that surprised me is when I got medication for ADHD, it actually decreased my anxiety too. And I'm not sure why that happened, but it did. And I am forever grateful because I feel like I'm finally like a typical person with anxiety and not overly anxious and like the OCD type tendencies, like where you're checking everything. Like I used to get up in the middle of the night to check all the doors because I'm like, I don't think I locked the doors. And now I'll wake up and be
That-
like, I did not lock the doors. And I'm like, yes, I did. And I'll go back to sleep. If I'm
yeah.
having a really stressful day, maybe I'll get up and check. But for the most part, I can just
Mhm.
stay in bed and go back to sleep. And it's kind of awesome not have to
Yeah.
get out of bed 5 times a night. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I said I would be unbiased, but I'm
It's
showing some
hard,
bias here.
especially when it's successful for you. But
Yeah.
again, I want to say it really is. I'm going to use myself for an example with like an antidepressant. Like, did it cure? No, but did it help me not to be in a state of like hyperventilating, crying every night, going down the rabbit hole? Absolutely. But now with that support, in addition to coping skills and counseling and all of that, life is much more manageable and I get better sleep, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like really think of it as that tool aspect. But again, this is a conversation for you and your medical professionals, your doctors, and things like that, and doing your own research because again, it doesn't work for everybody, and maybe medication isn't the route for you or your child. So,
Yeah. And medication is not risk-free. And it
mhm.
can take some time to find the right dose, to find the right medication to even take. So when I was trying out medications, it took a good year to find the right one. And I understand that I did that as an adult, so I knew what to expect. But when it's your kid, it's a little bit different because they can have some crazy side effects like appetite suppression, sleep problems, mood changes, headaches, irritability, all those different things. Like they can help with those things, but then they can also cause those things. And if your kid isn't able to tell you if any of those things are going on, then that can
Yeah.
be really scary and you don't know like how to help them if they don't tell you. And
Yeah, if they can't
so,
communicate those side effects, like
yeah,
that is a worry and an issue.
yeah. And like my son got a medication one time that he looked like he was having absent seizures. He was completely sedated on it, but we didn't even think that it could be the medication because he was doing so well in other areas that we actually took him to a neurologist to get him assessed for absent seizures. And then we finally realized what was happening. So things like that can happen. And then we were like, okay, we're not trying medication anymore. And then a few years went by and we decided to try a different medication and it is working amazing for him. Like he wasn't able to leave the house. He wouldn't go anywhere unless it was his grandparents' house. And now he's able to leave the house. He's more happy. He's excited. So yeah, so that's just an example of you never know what's going to happen. So it can be kind of scary to try new medications. But it's also an example of you need to try different medications and different doses to find out what works the best. And like I said, for me, that process took a good year to find the right combination. Like sometimes you take more than one medication, and so you have to find the right combination and the right dosage of each pill that you're taking in the combination. And so that can be really hard if you're doing it with your kid because, like I said, if the kid's like under 10 years old, or even if they're a little bit older, they might not be able to communicate exactly what's going on. And so you won't be aware of what's going on. And I think that's the hardest part for me. It was really scary to put my kids on medication, but I'm glad we did because they've had such good benefits from it.
Mm.
And like my son said, his brain was quiet, but he's also able to be a better friend. And he's able to be the person that he wants to be because his brain is quiet and not constantly interrupting him. So that is a positive. But then there's the absent seizure thing. So you have to weigh the pros and cons. Once again, none of this is medical advice. We are not
Yeah.
telling you what to do. The best thing you can do is to talk to your doctor, talk to your pediatrician, talk to the specialists. Like if you have a psychiatrist, talk to them and figure out what the best care is for your child because even if you do take medication, your kid still needs to learn emotional regulation skills, coping skills, accommodations, and therapy when needed. And you don't get that just from medication. Like medication is not some magic pill that's going to cure all your
Mm.
ills, like you were saying.
It lessens the symptoms,
Yeah.
right? That's what and I feel like something else I want to add in because we've had quite a few like I forget the term, but we've had the functional doctors that like you have these things and we think and it's in a box and it makes sense. These are the symptoms and it relates to this. And maybe it could be the fact you have really bad gut health. So again, that's why you have your doctors and you do the research and it's not a fix all end all. It just helps relieve some things most of the time.
Yeah.
If it works for you.
Yeah, I feel like if medication works, it just lowers or it raises your ability to handle life so you can learn the skills that you need to learn.
Mhm.
And then also, I think an important part of your toolbox for your kids is supportive parenting. So using those positive behavior strategies, just being there for your kids in the way that they need you to be, like we talked about last week, connecting with them in the way that they need to connect with you. And so, yeah, medication is not just going to fix everything, but it can raise the threshold for your kid to manage their life so they can learn those skills.
Other things can blossom.
Yeah, yeah. And then maybe instead of asking, should my child take this medication, you can ask yourself, is my child suffering? Is their nervous system constantly overwhelmed? Is my child even able to learn new skills right now that we're trying to teach them? Or are they too dysregulated to access them? And then have you tried environmental supports? For example, sensory supports, school accommodations, having a good routine, and then nervous system regulation strategies. Like, are you modeling self-regulation? Are you helping with co-regulation? All those different things. And then if they are too overwhelmed, maybe use medication and help them not feel so overwhelmed. And then just a reminder, medication does not mean you failed as a parent. It's no reflection on your parenting. Choosing not to medicate does not mean you are ignoring your child's needs. Choosing to medicate does not mean you failed as a parent. Every child is different. Every brain is different. Some kids truly benefit from medication. I know for my daughter, we had medication for her and it did absolutely nothing. And so she asked not to try anymore. She's like, I don't want to take this. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to. I'm not going to force you to. She has a really hard time sleeping. And I know that when I took that medication, it helped me sleep. So I was like, maybe it will help her sleep. It didn't. She didn't like it, so she doesn't take it. Totally fine. And then some do better with environmental supports and skill building alone. Some do better with both. You get to decide. You and your child and the doctor gets to decide what's best for you and your family.
Not
The goal,
us, not other
yeah,
parents.
yeah. That's part of what the summit is for next week, is so that you have confidence in yourself, so that you don't feel like you have to medicate or you have to not medicate based on other people's opinions of what you're doing. Because the goal is always the same, to help your child feel safe, regulated, and capable in their world. That's all that I want for your child. And I'm pretty sure that's all that any parent wants for their child, is for them to feel safe, regulated, and feel capable to do the things that they want to do. So if you're navigating ADHD, autism, anxiety, or any other neurodivergent needs in your child, you're not alone. These decisions can feel very heavy. I totally get that. I wrestled with the decision for a long time to try medication for my kids and for myself. But the more we understand how the brain and nervous system work, the better choices we can make for our kids. I just want you to be informed about medication. And so definitely talk to your doctor. Talk about the side effects, talk about what to look out for, talk about the good things that can happen, and then how to incorporate medication within a bigger model of support for your child. So, thank you for listening today. This was kind of a heavy topic. If you're angry that we support medication, I don't care. Don't tell me. No.
We support what you want to do best for your child.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole point, no, you can tell me anything you want. The whole point of this episode was that I have heard so many parents say they're afraid to start medication because they've only heard bad things coming from medication. Or I hear parents say, well, the kid is on medication, so they should be having great behavior, and they're not having great behavior, so what's the problem? And my answer to that is, you have to have medication within a bigger toolbox. Medication isn't right for everyone, but it can be awesome when it works. So, anyway, see you at the summit. Go to everybrainisdifferent.com, and I hope to see you there.